Okay, so I'm going to now talk about Neapolitan 6 chords, Roman numeral N6, and augmented 6 chords, of which there are, as you probably remember, several types. So we'll start with the Neapolitan. There's a few things to know about the Neapolitan. First thing is it's a major chord. It's a major triad. It's a major triad. It's not focusing very well. It's a major triad. It's in first inversion. And the major triad is built off of the flatted second scale degree. The flatted second scale degree. I like to put it this way because it applies to all cases. So in whatever key you're in, say C major, you take the flatted second scale degree. Second scale degree is D. We flat it to D flat. If it were already a flat, we would double flat it. If it were a sharp, we would just natural it, right? So we flat it, we bring it down a half step, and then we build a major triad. So this is a D flat. We need a major D flat major triad. Looks like that. And then we have to put it in first inversion. I'll put the A flat here, F there, fine. So there's our Neapolitan 6th. It's a D flat major chord in first inversion in C major. Let's do another key. Let's do a key of E minor. Key signature 1 sharp. We take the second scale degree. In E minor, that's F sharp. We flat it. That changes to F natural. We build a major triad, in this case an F major triad, and then we put it in first inversion. That's our Neapolitan 6th in E minor. The Neapolitan 6th is predominant. It's a predominant chord. It goes to 5. And usually the Ra, the lowered second scale degree, in this case an F natural, goes to T in the 5 chord. Something like this. I'm going to do triple the root and leave out the 5th. I can do that. And then a 1. Okay, so that's E minor, Neapolitan 6th, predominant or subdominant, dominant tonic. Usually goes to a 5. That's the Neapolitan 6th. Now I want to talk about augmented 6 chords. Augmented 6th chords. Remember these? They are named as such because they contain the interval of an augmented 6th. The Neapolitan 6 is named that way because it's in first inversion usually, so we call it a Neapolitan 6. This is the augmented 6th, which is referring to the interval of an augmented 6th, which appears in every augmented 6th chord. And there are, of course, 3 beautiful types. There is the Italian, so-called 6th, Roman numeral IT6. There is the French 6th, and there is the German 6th. There are also other types, but these are the only ones we care about. Okay, putting that in a box, don't know why. And it's good to memorize these in this order because this is kind of like the simplest one, and then this adds something, and this adds something different. The way we start thinking about these is, let's pick a key of C minor. So we'll have 3 flats. And you see these a little more often in minor because one of the pitches that is in every type is the lowered 6th scale degree, which is already present in the minor mode, but isn't in the major mode. So maybe these fit a little more easily into a minor key. We're in C minor, and we're going to start with the Italian 6th. The way I like to start is I like to figure out what the 5th scale degree is. So step 1 is, what's my 5th scale degree in my key? In C minor, it's G. I'm going to write it over here. And then I find the pitches that are on either side of G by a half step. Okay? So right above G would be an A flat. Right below would be an F sharp. And these are the two pitches that are going to form the augmented 6th that gives these chords its name. The two notes on either side, a half step away from your 5th scale degree. In this case, an A flat and F sharp. I like to do it this way because depending on the key, one might be a flat and a sharp, one might be a natural, etc. The best way to be certain is half step above your 5th scale degree, half step below your 5th scale degree, and that's the sort of outer shell of your augmented 6th chord. I'd like to add that it's also important that these two pitches really be able to form an augmented 6th. So for instance, if you got that G, that 5th scale degree, and then you said, well, half step above G is G sharp, half step below G is G flat, and you think, okay, here's my shell of my augmented 6th, you'd be wrong. Not because you didn't find the notes on either side of G, that's true, but these two notes can't form any kind of 6th because they're both Gs, so they'll form some kind of unison or octave. So you need two pitches that will form a 6th or a 3rd. Now, sometimes in the repertoire, that's not true. You'll have composers who will spell things weird, so that's something to look out for. But the most typical way to see this is as an actual augmented 6th interval and not as pitches that might sound the same but can't form an augmented 6th. Okay, so it always has to be something that can form either a diminished 3rd or, if you invert it, an augmented 6th. Then what we do is we write it as an augmented 6th, which is to say, this is not a 6th, it's a 3rd. This is a diminished 3rd. Right? We want an augmented 6th, so we need to invert these and put the A flat in the bass. I'll put it up here. A flat, the F sharp above, I'll put it here. And that forms a 6th. A to F is a 6th. A flat to F sharp is an augmented 6th. Okay. And then we fill in the rest. For the Italian 6th, we add in scale degree 1. In this case, we're in C, so that's C. And usually you double that if we're doing part writing, which we're not. And so the Italian 6th is kind of the simplest version. You get the augmented 6th interval, and then you add a sort of a 3rd above the bass, scale degree 1. So the steps are find the 5th scale degree. Oh, coffee. Second is half step on either side to form the augmented 6th interval. And then step 3 for Italian 6 is add scale degree 1. Okay, in this case C. Let's move over here and do a different key. Let's do a major key. I'll do it down here. Let's do, I don't know, A major. So sharp, 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 sharp. So many sharps. A major. And we'll do another Italian sixth. First step is fifth scale degree. In this case, we're in A major, so that would be an E. Right above that E would be an F natural. Right below that E would be a D sharp. And so I've found my augmented sixth. In this case, it's written as a diminished third, but I just have to flip it around. F natural in the bass, D sharp somewhere up top, and then I add scale degree 1. In this case, we're in A major, so that's an A. I'll add it there, I'll add it there, boom, Italian sixth, okay? Now there's the question of how it resolves. Just like the, where'd they go? Neapolitans, which are subdominants, which are predominants. All of the augmented sixth chords are predominants as well. So that means they want to go to a 5. So this usually will go to a 5. I'm going to sneak it in here before this E. And the first thing you can do is resolve these two members of the augmented sixth, the D sharp and the F natural. They resolve to the fifth scale degree in opposite directions. And then we're in A major, so this is an E chord. We'll put a G sharp here, we'll put a B here, and that's our 5. Italian sixth going to 5. That's what it likes to do because it's subdominant, predominant. Okay, so that's the first type. The second type is the French sixth, right? So let's move over here to do a French sixth. Let's maybe move back into C minor. I don't know why I like C minor, but somehow it feels right with augmented sixths. So we start the exact same way as we did before. We start by finding those, our fifth scale degree. In this case it was G, C minor it's G, and then we get our F sharp and A flat, and that's again our outer shell of this. So we can add that in. There's our A flat, there's our F sharp. So it has the same augmented sixth shell for the French version. And then we continue. We add scale degree 1, just like before, just like in the Italian version, C, because we're in C minor, that's scale degree 1. And then the French sixth has another step, add scale degree 2 as well. So you don't just have scale degree 1, you also have scale degree 2. We're in C minor, so that's a D. And so you have an extra pitch in the French sixth. The way this resolves, French sixth. If we go to a 5, the augmented sixth interval resolves in opposite directions towards the fifth scale degree. And then you fill in the rest, and it's even easier with the French sixth because this will stay the same. That's a D in this chord. So the part writing is quite easy. And there's your French sixth. Has scale degree 1 and scale degree 2 in addition to the shell. The German sixth, we start with the shell, A flat, F sharp. We add scale degree 1, just like in the others. Then instead of adding scale degree 2, for this one it has a different step 4, so to speak. We add, I like to say, perfect fifth above bass. And by bass I mean that you've arranged this chord in this way. So this is an A flat in the bass. A perfect fifth above it would be an E flat. And we don't need to say E flat because it's in the key signature. The reason I don't say scale degree 3, even though that's true, is that if we were in C major, scale degree 3 would be an E natural, and that wouldn't be the right pitch. So the German sixth chord, or the French sixth chord, or the Italian sixth chord, any of the augmented sixth chords look the same whether you're in major or minor. It doesn't change. So writing the rule this way, add a perfect fifth above the bass, will always give you the right answer. That's why I say it this way. Now, German sixths often resolve not to a 5, but to a cadential 6/4. Which looks similar. You have the outer voices doing what they do, resolving in opposite directions. And then instead of these moving, they actually stay the same. That's our 5/6/4. And then G stays. These shift. Okay. So the German sixth often resolves to a cadential 6/4, not just to a 5. The reason is that if this went right to the 5, you'd have this parallel fifths, E flat to D, A flat to G. So that's why it often goes to a cadential 6/4 and avoids that issue. Okay. So that's our German sixth. All of these are predominant chords. They're chromatic chords of a particular type. Augmented sixth, you've got the Italian, simple, the augmented sixth shell that we find by finding the fifth scale degree and the pitches on either side of it. Then we add scale degree 1. With the French, we add scale degree, nope, that's another Italian. With the French, we add scale degree 1 and scale degree 2. And it has a kind of a whole tone scale vibe to it. Like A flat, C, D, and F sharp are all a part of a whole tone scale. Right? You could go A flat, B flat, C, D, E, F sharp. That would be a whole tone scale. So it sounds a little whole tone-ish. And then the German sixth, we had scale degree 1 and a perfect fifth above the bass. So long as you've written the bass like this, with the shell, the way I've talked about it. Okay. The other thing worth noting about the German sixth is that it's, if you spell it differently, instead of A flat, C, E flat, F sharp, you spell it as this, A flat, C, E flat, G flat. It's not very clear. That's an E flat, that's a G flat. Right, those sound the same, but this is like a 5/7 of something. Right? In C minor, it'd be a 5/7 of D flat. So it'd be the 5/7 of your Neapolitan. And we'll later on talk about, that's the reason that this can be reinterpreted either as a kind of 5/7 or as a German sixth, and that's a fun way you can use it to modulate to other keys. Okay, goodbye. Okay, finishing up our sort of review of chromatic harmony. I want to talk about common tone chords. We have the common tone diminished 7. We have the common tone augmented 6th. And this is the nomenclature you'd use for these as a Roman numeral, in place of a Roman numeral, common tone. And what in both cases this means is that this is a chord, in this case a diminished 7th chord, in this case an augmented 6th chord, which is not operating according to what we'd normally expect. Right, we expect augmented 6 chords, for instance, to be predominant, going to a 5 or something like that. We expect diminished 7th chords often to be maybe a 7 chord in our key, or a applied chord like a 7 of something. Right? And we expect that to be resolving in a certain way, to be moving, changing, to be making sense in a certain way. And when chords of that quality, of these qualities, don't make sense in that way, but do make sense in this common tone way, we call them a common tone chord. So here's an example. Here's an example. Let's pretend we're in C major. Let's pretend we're walking along, minding our own business in C major in a piece of music. And we see this chord. couple things we could notice about it right off the bat. There's a raised accidental. That's a sharp. That made it a lot clearer, right? That's an F sharp. It's a raised accidental. This is a fully diminished chord. This is an F sharp, fully diminished 7. Okay? Right away, if I were to guess, I would guess that this is tonicizing G, that this is a 7, fully diminished 7 of 5, of G. And if this happened next, oops, I don't have an eraser, that's a problem. Let's try that again. Okay. If that happened next, then we would be totally right to call it a 5-7 of 5. Oh, it's going to 5. It all makes sense. Our Roman numeral is making sense of how this is functioning. But what if we had that same exact chord? Same exact chord. There it is again. But it was going this. Bad voice leading, but it's okay. Same chord as before. Not going to a 5. Going to a, we're in the key of C major, this is a 1. Fully diminished 7th chord, going to a 1. If you play this on the piano, it'll sound pretty good. Why is that? Well, the reason really that this kind of still makes sense, even though it's not doing the thing that we expect a fully diminished 7th chord to be doing, which is this. It's doing something else. Why does it still sound okay? Well, it's because it's using this common tone. So if you have a fully diminished 7th chord that is not sort of resolving the way you'd expect out of a secondary dominant, or out of an applied chord, but is instead has a common tone with the chord it's going to, we instead call this a common tone diminished 7 as a way of appreciating that. And the same is true if we were in C major. We had our old friend, how about the French 6th? An augmented 6th chord. There it is. That one's French. A flat, C, D, F sharp. And we'd expect that, of course, to go to a 5. Right. That would be our expectation. But if it instead went to, let's say it went to this. Say it did something really wacky like this. Doesn't go to a 5 at all. It goes to this chord. We're still in C major, remember? This is our French 6th in C major. It's not going to a 5, it's not going to G. It's going to an F minor chord. Roman numeral minor 4. So this is a modal mixture chord in C major. It's a minor 4. Fair enough. But instead of calling this a French 6th, we want to appreciate the fact that the reason this makes any sense at all isn't because it's resolving the way it normally does, but instead because it has this common tone. In fact, this one has 2 common tones. That may or may not be true. And so we'd call this a common tone augmented 6th, going to a minor 4, modal mixture 4. Okay? So those are your 2 instances of common tone chords. And it's a notion that can be expanded as long as you think it's reasonable. Any chord that's not operating in the way you would normally expect it to, but is chromatic and needs some kind of explanation for why it makes sense, given the fact it's outside of your key. Calling it a common tone chord is an option. And usually we see these with fully diminished sevenths, sometimes with augmented sixths. Okay, next up, I want to talk about reinterpretations of chords. So one chord that can be reinterpreted is the 7, fully diminished 7. Let's say we're in D minor, and our 7 fully diminished 7 is a C sharp chord. There it is. That's our 7 fully diminished 7. Okay. And a fully diminished 7th chord is made up only of stacked minor thirds. C sharp to E is a minor third, E to G is a minor third, G to B flat is a minor third. And for that reason, if you, unlike, say a dominant 7th, which when you invert a dominant 7th, this 7th interval turns into a second, and you can sort of hear where that is in the chord. That's one of the ways of sort of orally identifying inversions of 7th chords. It's hearing where the sort of crunch dissonance of that 7th is. But when everything's a minor third, if you were to invert this, start on E, and do a 7 diminished 6, 5, this second here is actually a augmented second, which sounds just like a minor third. So you still have a chord that sounds like stacked minor thirds, this time starting on E. And for that reason, you can sort of treat that chord not as E, G, B flat, C sharp, but E, G, B flat, D flat sounds the same as a 7 diminished 7 itself in a different key. This one was in D minor. This one is in F major or F minor. Right? This could resolve into an F minor chord very nicely. Right? That would be our 1 in F. And you can keep going. You can start on G to B flat to D flat to F flat instead of E. And now you have a 7 fully diminished 7 in A flat major or minor. Right? Same 4 pitches as this, same 4 pitches as this. And then you can do it one more time. We can start on the B flat, D flat, F flat, and A double flat. Kind of awkward, but true enough. Or if you prefer, you could do A sharp, C sharp, E, and G. Let me write that again. A sharp, C sharp, E, and G. It's a little neater. Same pitches. This could be a 7 in the key of C flat or in the key of B, depending on how it's written. Right? Right. So with fully diminished 7th chords, you can rotate the chord. You say you start with a C sharp fully diminished chord in D minor as a 7. You can start on E and then respell it as it's has a 7 of something in a new key, in this case in F. and then respell it again starting on G as if it's in A flat. Respell it again as if it's in B, which means for every 7 fully diminished 7th chord, you can use that chord to modulate, or at least to tonicize, 3 other key areas than the one that you might expect. Okay, so that's a characteristic of fully diminished 7th chords that makes them kind of unique, and so you'll run into this in repertoire. The way this will happen is anytime you see a chromatic fully diminished 7th chord, or just a 7, and it's not making sense how it's working, like maybe you're in D minor, you see this chord, but it's going to some weird place. What the hell's going on? You see this chord, but it's going to a B minor chord? Huh? The reason could be that really it's being treated like an A sharp diminished chord. Sounds exactly the same pitches and harmonically respelled, and that makes sense of it going to a B minor chord in this case, right? So that's one type of reinterpretation. The other type is the German 6th, okay, which we've touched on. But I'm gonna say it again. Let's imagine we're in A minor, just to have a break. We're gonna find our German 6th. 5th scale degree would be E. Just above E would be F. Just below E would be D sharp. Why not E flat? Well, because F and E flat don't make a 6th. This is an augmented 6th. And then we have an A, scale degree 1, and a perfect 5th above the bass, which would be C. So F, A, C, D sharp. Not the clearest thing that's ever been written. Okay, that's our German 6th in A minor, and we'd expect it to go to a cadential 6/4. But we could also reinterpret this way. Instead of a D sharp, think of it as an E flat, and all of a sudden we have a 5/7 of B flat, which would be the Neapolitan in our key. So again, if you see a German 6th and it's not doing what you'd expect, it's possible that it's being reinterpreted as a dominant, because it sounds the same as a dominant. Okay? Now, the same is true for if we're staying in A minor. Imagine this common chord we'd see in A minor, right? This is a 5/7, easy breezy, right? We'd expect it to go to 1, right? Perhaps to 6 if it was feeling deceptive, right? But this too could be reinterpreted as an augmented 6 chord. Okay? I'm going to respell it. That minor 7th could be reinterpreted as an augmented 6th. I'm going to respell it again because I didn't mean to do that. So we'd have an E going to a C double sharp in this case. Okay. Sounds the same as a D, but this is a minor 7th. That's an augmented 6th. Okay. And then we'd have a G sharp still, and a B. And this would be an augmented 6th in, if we play it out and we have both parts of the augmented 6th interval moving in opposite directions, they'd be going to a D sharp, which means this would be in the key of G sharp. Okay? So if we're in A minor and we really, all we want in the world is to modulate to G sharp, that's not an easy modulation, right? G sharp major or whatever is pretty distant from A minor. But one way we can do that is through taking our 5/7 and using it as a sort of portal reinterpreting that as a German sixth, and then having it go instead to well, I guess it would be a 5/6/4 because it's German. So it would look like this. So this is a D sharp. Could I have picked a worse key? This would be going from a G sharp to an F double sharp. And then to a 1. Okay. This is a D sharp major chord, believe it or not. D sharp, F double sharp, A sharp. Okay. And this is your 5/6/4. So this looks like a 1. And this is your German sixth. Right. So we can get to this weird key of G sharp major or minor from A minor by reinterpreting a 5/7 as a German sixth. Okay.